Somewhere in an office hallway right now, a vending machine just took $1 for a bag of chips. Nobody was standing next to it. The owner was asleep. That single machine might clear between $40 and $120 in profit this month, according to operator data tracked by Vendsoft. It does that whether the owner shows up or not. That is the whole idea behind every asset on this list. You are about to see 12 of them, stacked from the cheapest thing you can buy today to the quiet ones the wealthy rarely talk about. And the 12th is not really an asset at all. It is the reason the other 11 work. Keep that gap in your head. Here is the question almost nobody asks out loud. Why do some people trade every single hour of their life for money, while others get paid for hours they already lived years ago? Warren Buffett put it plainly. If you do not find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. That sounds like a bumper sticker until you run the math on it. The average person earns money in exactly one shape. They show up, the clock runs, they get paid, the clock stops. Miss the shift, miss the pay, get sick, get nothing. That is not a moral failing. It is a design flaw in owning one single income stream. The cost of not fixing it is not dramatic. It is slow. It is another decade of trading time you cannot get back for a paycheck that stops the moment you do. Think about that for a second. So here's the promise. By the end of this, you will have 12 real ways money moves without you, each with a real number attached and at least one real name behind it. We start with assets you could fund this afternoon. We end with the ones that quietly protect old money. Stay to the end, because the last one is not a product you buy. It is the pattern that ties the other 11 together, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let us start where everyone can start, with the boring paper assets that pay you for doing almost nothing. Number 1 is the most boring, and that is the point. A high-yield savings account. In July of 2026, the best of these paid around 4% a year, according to Bankrate, on money you can pull out any Tuesday. Park $10,000, and it quietly hands you roughly $400 a year for doing nothing but leaving it alone. Its slightly sharper cousin is the Treasury bill, a short loan to the United States government. In 2023 and 2024, 4-week T-bills paid north of 5%, backed by the same government that prints the currency. Think of it as the ground floor of the whole building. Your money is insured up to $250,000, so the floor does not fall out from under you. Nobody gets rich here, but it is the first dollar you own that earns while you sleep, and it teaches the habit. The habit is the real asset. Most people keep their savings in a big bank account paying almost nothing, leaving that 4% on the table every year without noticing. And once you have tasted 4% for zero effort, the next question is obvious. What pays you and grows at the same time? That brings us to dividend stocks, number 2. When you own a share of a company, some of them mail you a slice of the profits every quarter just for holding on. The clean example is Coca-Cola. It has raised its dividend for 62 straight years, through recessions, oil shocks, and a pandemic. 62 years. There is even a club for this. The S&P 500 Dividend Aristocrats, 69 companies as of 2026 that have raised their payout for at least 25 years running, tracked by Sure Dividend. Owning them is like planting a fruit tree in someone else's yard and getting a crate on your porch every 3 months. Here is the funny part. The company does the hiring, the shipping, the lawsuits, the bad quarters. You do the sitting. The payoff is that those raises tend to outrun inflation, so the checks get bigger while you do nothing. A share bought decades ago can now pay more in yearly dividends than the original purchase price. That is what a compounding raise looks like when you leave it alone long enough. But buying one company at a time is a lot of homework. What if you could own 500 of them in one click? That is number 3, the index fund. Instead of betting on one company, you buy a tiny slice of hundreds at once. The S&P 500 has returned around 10% a year on average since 1957, according to Fidelity. Vanguard's version of that fund charges 3 cents on every $100, a fee of 0.03%. Hear that again. For 3 cents, you rent 500 of America's biggest companies working for you all year. It is the closest thing investing has to a cheat code, and it is open to anyone with a phone and a few dollars. Let's be honest. It is also deeply unexciting, which is exactly why it works. Nobody brags about it at parties. Here is the catch. Stocks are great, but they do not send you rent. Something else does. Number 4 is the REIT, the Real Estate Investment Trust. It lets you own commercial property without ever fixing a toilet. The famous one is Realty Income, which literally trademarked the phrase the monthly dividend company. It has paid 669 consecutive monthly dividends and raised the payout for 31 straight years, across more than 15,000 properties per sure dividend in 2024. You buy a share, and a slice of rent from thousands of stores lands in your account every single month. It is landlording with none of the phone calls. Picture it. A tenant somewhere is mopping a floor at midnight so your dividend shows up on the 1st. The catch is that REITs move with interest rates, and 2022 stung, which raises a bigger question. What if you want to be paid, but you cannot stomach the swings? That is number 5, bonds. A bond is just a loan you make to a government or a company that pays you interest on a schedule and returns your money at the end. When you buy a Treasury bond, you become the bank and the government becomes your borrower. For most of the last 2 years, that borrower paid you 4 to 5% a year for the privilege on the safest debt on earth. It will never double overnight. That is not the job. The job is a steady, boring check that shows up like clockwork while stocks throw their tantrums. Bonds are the shock absorber under the whole vehicle. And that is the end of the paper assets, the ones you can buy from your couch. Now we go outside to the things you can actually walk up and touch. Number 6 is where we started, the humble vending machine. One machine grosses somewhere between $150 and $400 a month and nets its owner 40 to 120 of that per operator data from VendSoft. One machine is a rounding error, but the whole model is copy and paste. Buy a good location, then another, then 10. The machine takes cash at 2 in the morning and never calls in sick. Here is the light part. It is the most honest employee you will ever have. It does not want a raise, a title, or a corner office. The reward comes from the boredom of it. The same box doing the same small thing 1,000 times. And if a metal box on a wall can do this, imagine a whole building that does it. That building might be a laundromat, number 7. It is one of the oldest quiet cash businesses in America. The industry pulls in nearly $5 billion a year across roughly 29,500 laundromats, according to the Coin Laundry Association. People wash clothes in booms and in busts, which is why operators like the sector when everything else feels shaky. It is a cash business tied to a need that never goes out of style, and a big share of the customers do not own a washer at home. Once the machines are in and the rent is set, the money mostly runs itself, coins and card taps adding up while the owner is anywhere but there. It is not glamorous. Nobody dreams of folding towels. But a good laundromat can throw off cash for decades, and the customers bring their own labor. The bigger the box, though, the bigger the number, which points us at the sector the professionals love. Number 8 is self-storage, the business of renting people empty space for their stuff. It is a $44.3 billion industry in the United States as of 2024, running around 85% full, per the Self-Storage Almanac. The largest operator, Extra Space Storage, ran more than 3,600 facilities that year, just ahead of Public Storage. Look at the economics for a second. A concrete box with a roll-up door needs no plumbing, no overnight staff, and the tenant carries their own boxes in. People rent a unit for a temporary move and then forget about it for 4 years. Here's what almost nobody tells you. The whole business quietly runs on that forgetting. A $20 unit becomes a $40 unit over time, and the tenant rarely bothers to move a few boxes over the increase. That inertia is worth more than any marketing budget. But all of these still sit on land you rent. What about land you own? That is number 9, the classic rental house. You buy a property, someone else lives there, and their rent covers your mortgage, and then some. On a decent single-family rental in 2024, investors targeted cap rates in the range of 5 to 8%, meaning a $200,000 property aimed to throw off $10,000 to $16,000 a year before financing, according to brokerage benchmarks. The tenant is quietly buying you a house, one payment at a time. It is the most hands-on asset so far, toilets and tenants and the occasional bad month, but it is also the one most fortunes were built on. Every landlord has a 2 in the morning plumbing story. They tell it while the house keeps appreciating. And that hints at the real secret. The wealthy do not just want the building, they want the ground it stands on. Which brings us to number 10, the ground lease, and its favorite modern form, the cell tower. You own a patch of land, a company bolts something valuable to it and pays you rent for decades. Crown Castle owns or operates more than 40,000 towers across North America. In one documented agreement, a carrier paid roughly $1,900 a month for tower access, rising about 2% a year. You are not running anything. You own the dirt, and the dirt collects a check. It is the purest version of the whole idea, an asset that does almost nothing and gets paid anyway. Somewhere a signal is bouncing off a box on a hill, and the person who owns that hill is asleep. These leases often run for decades, with locked-in raises written right into the contract. That is why cell tower companies are among the most valuable landlords in the country without ever building a single home. The reward is permanence. Steel does not move. Neither does the rent. But the wealthiest assets are not even physical. Number 11 is royalties, getting paid every time someone uses something you own. Music is the loud example. In 2021, Bruce Springsteen sold his catalog to Sony for a reported $500 million because a great song earns every time it plays, forever. Bob Dylan sold his songwriting to Universal around the same stretch for a sum reported north of $300 million. Somebody streams the song in a car in Ohio and a fraction of a cent moves. Multiply that by 100 million plays. The artist wrote it once, maybe in a single afternoon, and it pays out for a century. Royalties are not just music. They are patents, book rights, franchise fees, photographs. It is the closest a human gets to being paid for one good idea over and over, which leads to the asset most people never even see. Number 12 is private credit, and this is where old money goes quiet. Instead of putting your cash in a bank so the bank can lend it out and keep the spread, you become the lender directly. It is a $3 trillion market as of 2025, on its way to a projected $5 trillion by 2029, according to Morgan Stanley. Direct lending returned about 10.5% annualized late in 2024. Firms like Blackstone, Apollo, and Ares built empires on it, managing hundreds of billions in loans between them. For decades, this door was locked to everyone but pensions and the very rich, which is exactly why it stayed quiet. Now smaller funds are cracking it open for regular investors. You are the bank now collecting interest while a business you never visit makes its payments. And that is the last named asset. But look back at the 11 before it. Notice they are all secretly the same move. Now let us be honest about the part the highlight reels skip. None of this is free, and none of it is truly effortless at the start. The word passive is a lie in the beginning. Every asset here charges an entry fee, in money, in time, or in the risk of loss. REITs looked bulletproof until 2022, when rising rates knocked many of them down 20 to 30% in a single year. A vending machine in a dead location earns nothing but a monthly headache. Self-storage runs 85% full on average, which means 1 in 7 doors sits empty and unpaid. Private credit pays double digits precisely because some of those borrowers do not pay it back, and when the economy turns, a few of them will not. The rental house needs a new roof the same month the tenant leaves. Even the boring T-bill loses to inflation in years when prices run hot, so the safe choice quietly costs you, too. There is no asset that pays you in your sleep without first asking you to stay awake, learn it, and risk something real. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling the course, not the asset. The income is real. The word passive is doing a lot of quiet lifting. So here's the twist I promised, the 12th asset that is not really an asset. Go back and look at the 11. A vending machine takes $1. A dividend pays a few cents a share. A storage unit collects $100 a month. A song earns a fraction of a cent. Individually, every one of them is almost insultingly small. That is the secret hiding in plain sight. The real asset was never any single item on the list. It is what you do with the small amounts they spit out. The wealthy figured out one move a long time ago. Buy something that pays you small, repeated amounts. Take those amounts and buy the next thing that pays you. Then point the second stream at a third. The T-bill interest buys dividend shares. The dividends buy a REIT. The REIT rent funds a down payment on the rental. The rental cash flow buys into the credit fund. Each asset feeds the next, and the stack grows a floor at a time, mostly while you sleep. That is the 12th asset. Not a product, a pattern. Here is the line to remember. Wealth is not one big win. It is 100 small streams pointed at each other until they become a river. That is the whole game. The rich are not playing a different sport. They are just running the same 12 moves in the right order and letting time do the boring part. The first stream is always the hardest because it looks too small to matter. It is not too small. It is the seed of every stream that comes after it. Picture two people who started with the same $1,000. Marcus wanted the big win. He chased the hot stock, then the flip, then the coin everyone swore was going to the moon. He was always one lucky break from rich and always starting over. Dev did something boring. He bought the dull 4% thing, then pointed it at a dividend fund, then a slice of a REIT, and just kept aiming each small stream at the next. For a few years, Marcus looked way ahead, and he said so. Often. But streams do not care who is loud. A decade later, Marcus was still hunting the next big thing. Dev had a dozen of them, quietly paying him every month, and he barely watched them anymore. Somewhere in an office hallway, a machine takes $1 for a bag of chips, and nobody is standing next to it. One of them owns that machine now. If someone you know is still waiting for one big exciting win, share this with them. Like the video, subscribe, and go build your first small stream.